Welcome. We're really glad that you joined us today.
Yes, we are. So welcome to everybody. Just briefly to sort of introduce ourselves rather. I am Dr. Amanda Colon. I am a small animal veterinarian, and I am working part-time right now, full-time teaching as an assistant professor at Mercy College in Dobbs Ferry, New York, for the veterinary technology program. And I've been teaching there now for a couple of years full-time, and I love it. And I got a chance to do this great project with my wonderful colleague who has been so wonderful in taking me under her wing, so patient with me. We've got Sabrina Timperman here.
Hi, my name is Sabrina Timperman. I am the Associate Director and Associate Professor in the Mercy College Vet Tech program. I teach, I've taught anatomy, physiology, clinical pathology, and I really love this topic that we're discussing today. Trying to get your classes more interactive and engaged is sort of a hobby of mine. I love trying to come up with new ways to sort of excite the students and keep them engaged and involved. I also want to give a thanks to Dr. Colon, Amanda, who really brings sunshine and happiness into my life. She's very bubbly and a great friend and confidant, and I really am glad that she is now working with us at Mercy. So we're going to get started, and we're going to talk. This is our talk about flip, don't flop in online and in-person teaching. Because I know there's a lot of fears and sort of anxieties that sometimes go around or go about with the flipped classroom. So we wanted to sort of talk a little bit about how to structure it and do sort of a modified flip and make sure that nobody flops in the process. So the agenda today, or what we're going to talk about, again, we're going to do a little bit of an introduction of what the flipped model is, and then we're going to talk about the multiple methods approach. We're going to talk a little bit about recording lectures and different equipment that you can use, and then we're going to break down into some different activity options. We're going to give an example that Dr. Colon uses in her teaching terminology, and then I'll give you an example of something that I do called the personalized syllabus in my physiology class. We also wanted to give you a tool that's really been helpful to use online. It actually has some great resources and allows you to engage with the students in the online environment. It's called Book Widgets. And then we're going to talk a little bit about ways that you can flip and have a Q&A.
All right, so let's get right into it. Let's talk about flipping. So this is just a brief little slide to give you the basics for those of you who may not have a really strong foundation yet in flipping. A great resource, there's some multiple little sort of bound books by author Barbie Honeycutt. She has a PhD, and she, in terms of her approach, she really uses even simplified projects to some things that are much more complex in terms of activities. The focus is obviously to focus on your learners by involving them in the actual process, and that's the concept of flip. And it's all about one key word that we struggle with in teaching, right? It's engagement. And now with an online platform, as being our sort of main option here, we really start to struggle with that. So that's why we wanted to share some of these great techniques and approaches. And the biggest thing I think that we also found as a great benefit of flipping is, as it says here, it increases the opportunity to include student engagement, but mostly it helps to improve their critical thinking. So we can all appreciate that, especially in this particular subject matter that we're giving our students, it's going to be crucial that they're able to take all these pieces of the puzzle and put it together into one big picture. So we're putting that emphasis back on active participation, and based on new research, on the most recent research, we've seen that it's not just about giving them the information one particular way and making the student have to do it sort of and flip it themselves. We flip it for them, giving them visual cues, audio cues. Some need to read things to learn. So by giving this in multiple ways, we're allowing our students to maximize the learning experience. So it's something that is possible. It takes a little bit, but we're going to show you some really great shortcuts.
Oops, sorry. So when we talk about the multiple methods approach, this is sort of a modified way that we, Amanda and I have been using the sort of flipped approach. So I personally have to have a little bit of structure in my class, a little bit of review of some of the more terms and lecture material. So what we have done is usually we have an online, asynchronous online lecture that the student has to view prior to coming to class. When they arrive in class, we give them a short quiz on that material to make sure that they actually watched and followed what was going on. Part of the class time consists of a review of those lectures, going through the highlights and the main points, or the points where people have most difficulty. So again, I teach physiology and pathophysiology, so there's a lot of different processes that students sometimes get confused about. So we'll go through some of the important processes and concepts and problem areas that I know students get stuck on, and go into a more in-depth explanation of sort of those difficult concepts. The remaining class time, though, we do various active assignments, and really the bulk of this lecture is talking about some of the different active assignments that you can do, and sort of how to get your students, again, engaged in the process. Doing it online is twice as hard in the classroom. Again, you sort of have the students there. You can play off how they're doing and what their responses are. But again, online is sort of a whole new ballpark. So we're trying to give some ideas of ways of things that you could do to keep those students engaged in an online environment. So again, we have them watch a little bit of the lecture material before we go, and there's a huge variety of different ways to record your lectures. So we at Mercy use Blackboard, but most LMSs have some sort of recording feature, or Blackboard Collaborate is what we have in Blackboard. But Zoom is very, again, a lot of people are using now, and you can actually do a pretty good recording on Zoom. If you get the latest version of PowerPoint, you can actually record your lectures using PowerPoint. It also even has a screen capture feature where you can actually capture part of the screen and record what you're doing on a program or on a site. And there's even a closed caption way if you click on the settings to get closed captions in your PowerPoint if you're using the latest PowerPoint. So there are a lot of tools today that allow you to make these short sort of lecture materials. I usually recommend, and the literature has shown, that doing small chunks is much better than doing a long drawn out lecture. So they recommend maybe 15, 20-minute sort of chunks of lecture that they can watch. Students really appreciate that too. It seems less of a burden to them if they think about watching 15, 20 minutes as opposed to watching a half an hour long sort of lecture. So having it in chunks is, again, more palatable to the student, and also tends to be more effective, and they actually will watch it more often if you have them in these smaller bits.
So let's talk about the engagement part in terms of having some fun. As you can probably tell, I love games, and I love getting the students excited about games. A little competition can sometimes really be an inspiration for them to become more engaged, even those that may be a little bit more shy. So there are lots of great resources online. Believe it or not, you can use these even online as well as in class. So there are games like Jeopardy, which I know many people might have used in the past, but Who Wants to Be a Millionaire can be a fun one. True false lightning rounds. True false lightning rounds can be really fun because they for some reason, my students get excited when they hear lightning round, where they're like, there's a time thing, or you know, that they're facing off against each other sometimes. So in class, you can separate them into teams for some of these, or you can keep them as individual sort of competitions depending on the class size. But with the true false lightning rounds, even just making a PowerPoint where you're literally just stating statements, and then if you're in class, to keep them engaged and moving, what I've done is if they think the answer is true, then they stand up. If the answer is false, then they can sit down. But then if it's false, they have to explain why it's false and what would be the correct answer. And I always offer the phone a friend option for any point through the game. Then there's Kahoot, which I know a lot of you have used as well. Kahoot can be really great in a lot of facets. If you do have the budget for it, there are some additional new tools that I don't know if many of you are aware of other than just from the free aspect. If you are able to invest a little bit, there are some other great additional options on Kahoot that are matching games as well on there. So that's a whole nother aspect of Kahoot as well that adds all these other options within it. Bingo can be really valuable. I use Bingo a lot, believe it or not, from when we're going over group projects or when we're going over digital stories, which my colleague Sabrina has utilized so much and has done some great things with digital stories. And that's another great tool, by the way, that you can use. But basically, while we're sitting there watching, the students have their bingo boards, and there's a great resource online that I can go ahead and have posted for you, that literally you put in whatever terms you want onto the bingo board. The students can click the link and it creates their own shuffled board. And then what they're doing is now, as they're watching the lecture or as they're watching the group projects or presentations, then they have to check off if keywords were said. And then by the end, whoever says bingo first, all right, they get a little prize, whatever it might be, or they win that point. So these are really fun and interactive. And the key thing is, again, engagement. And the critical learning aspect can come in right into all of this as well, by the way, just simply with how you word or how you present your questions on some of these games.
I've also used Bingo, sort of a cheap man's version of Bingo, where I actually have students create a chart, like they draw a box and then again have 3 or 4 boxes in that, and then I read off 5 or 6 questions, and they put the answers in the boxes, what they think the one-word answer is in the box, and then we use that as the bingo game card. When we start calling out the terms, they put they take 3 or 4 of the terms, or I usually give about 10, and then they put 5 of the terms in the boxes, and then we start counting off the words, the answers, and then they can sort of cross those off, and whoever gets bingo first is the winner. That way they have to know what the answer is to the question and put the correct word in the bingo sheet, or else they're never going to get bingo. So that was sort of a cheap man's version of doing the bingo if you don't have a technology. But again, there's lots of different programs that'll allow you to do that. There are also things, a lot of different websites that will do crossword puzzles and word searches, and again, bingo things. So I'm going to talk about one a little bit later that's called Book Widgets, and it's got a lot of different features, but you can make a crossword puzzle on it that the students actually have to answer online. It lights up, again, like you can see when they write in the question, and then it'll tell them they put in all the answers that they think are, and then the beauty of this thing is that it's graded for you. So you get a printout of what the students put in and whether it's correct or not correct. It highlights everything correct in green and writes if it's not correct in red. And you get this for each of the students that submit it. They can actually directly do it online and email. So I've been using it through our LMS in Blackboard, where I have them on Blackboard Collaborate, and they follow a link and they go and work together in teams to answer the crossword puzzles. and then they email me their responses, and then again, it's already graded for me. So I just look at it and send it back to them. So the, again, lots of different sites for crosswords. Again, word searches can also be fun, where you have a question and they have to figure out what the word is and then look for the word in the word search. So lots of different activities that you can do.
So here are some other options when we're talking about group work potentially, where we want to, again, invest in engagement and try to get them in socializing with each other, even though they're all sitting at home on their individual computers right now. So one of the options is you can do a draw it, pass it, guess it game, where you separate the students into groups of maybe somewhere around 3 or 4, and then one person will start the drawing, and they'll have only a certain amount of time to start the drawing. Let's say 10, 15 seconds of a particular term or disease process, whatever we're trying to get the person to guess. Then in that 10 or 15 seconds, they have to pass it to their fellow classmate, who then has to try to finish it off from what we've already started with the previous group member. So it's kind of, they have to have sort of that unified thought process of how to finish the full picture, so that in the end we can get, the way that I'll usually do it is they have to draw the picture each individually within their group, and then they go ahead and present the full picture to the rest of the class, and the rest of the class has to guess it off of their picture. But you can do it even within that same group. So that's the great thing. Then, of course, we have sort of right into sort of the Pictionary concept of the drawing challenge. And you can still do this online, by the way. The whiteboards in Zoom and Blackboard, or whichever platform that you're using, you can always open up PowerPoint and just open up a blank slide and have the students practice drawing. And they have to draw something to get them to get their class members to guess it. Taboo, I don't know if anybody's ever played Taboo. Taboo is a great game. Taboo is where you have one particular term or disease process, in our case, that maybe we want a student to get, or even an anatomical part, because I teach anatomy lab. So one specific muscle, let's say. Well, then you end up using that as your keyword, but then on the same card, you're going to give them 4 or 5 words that they cannot use to describe that particular main term. So that's what makes it kind of tricky, where if we're talking about, they can't say that muscle's on the arm, or it's not near another muscle, then it makes it a little tricky, and it makes them have to think a little bit more outside the box, which, let's face it, that's what we really want them to be doing. We need them to be expanding. Then we had a really great faculty seminar at Mercy College, where we were presented with a different type of approach, where it's the question formation techniques by Andrew P. Minigan. We put that on there so that if you wanted to kind of get a little bit more information, but more specifically, it's really breaking the students into groups and having the students make up their own questions about the content, so that those questions can then become either part of your exams, quizzes, or future assignments, or it's just something that you can go over as another review in class during class time. So we separate them into groups. We give them one of those really big Post-it notes, okay, or poster boards, and they all get a chance to have, let's say, 2 minutes to just brainstorm what questions can we think of about this content, and then having them go back and maybe tweak some of them, maybe going through and saying, okay, well, we can expand this one a little bit more, or we can make this one more detail oriented. And all of that is still, again, engaging the student, telling them they have to start thinking from a different perspective, and again, promotes critical thinking. Finally, we have a vocabulary mix. This one is quick and easy, and it's for a lot of great ages, mind you, because we do some activities with students who are not necessarily, who are like high school age, or some of them are younger, that we're trying to introduce even veterinary medicine to, as well as in class. I've used this, where you can have basically an answer and then a question, and write them each on an index card, and then pass out the index cards just sort of variably. We're going to mix them up, shuffle them, and then hand them out to each of the students. Then it's up to the students within a certain period of time to communicate with each other on finding the match that is the question to the answer. Now, I put a little tweak on that and added one other level after that, so that once they have found the proper match, they're to go to a certain corner of the classroom, and then they're to present the question to the class and sort of rate the class's answer to that question in comparison to the actual answer they have, and explain it. So it's teaching, it's sort of a peer teaching moment as well. So these are some great opportunities to do some group work with your students, and these can still be utilized online as well. So in terms of giving you an idea, and I see some great questions popping up, and we're going to be able to address this for you once we get through our presentation. Thank you for asking these great questions. So in terms of giving you a little bit more of a specific example though, we at Mercy College have pretty big blocks of time that we're given when we're teaching. So Sabrina and I have sort of adapted our process to that time frame because it's tough. We have about a 3-hour block that we're given to teach our material, and we'll meet with the students, at least I meet with my students usually once a week over that 3-hour time frame. So it's a lot to fill in. So what I've done is I've tweaked it by using sort of a flip method and keeping the students engaged while still allowing for the actual lecture time frame. And what I mean by that is what happens is I posted, for example, an introduction to my derm lecture. Okay, and this is for small animal diseases. These are students that are higher up in the program and basically are pretty much going on to externship. And so this is sort of, it's a case-based approach class. So we're trying to get them to reformat some of all of that information that they've taken in from the previous years and now put it into an actual case presentation. So what I've done was I recorded a very brief lecture that had pictures of the different types of lesions and then brief descriptions or definitions of those skin lesions. Meaning papule. What's the difference between a papule versus a pustule? So that they have sort of that review. Then as soon as they come into class, I have a little slideshow that I did with PowerPoint, which we can also morph into online teaching as well. And what I've done is, especially in Blackboard Collaborative, they can be the first to raise their hand if they want to answer and tell us what the picture is of using the dermatology term. And then they get a second opportunity in terms of sharing the knowledge by describing why that particular picture applies to that particular lesion. So they not only have to identify it by picture visually, but now I'm making them sort of bring that information that classifies that as that particular lesion. So we have a game where I separate them into 2 groups. And in this case, what I did was when I did it on Zoom, they had to be the first to basically raise their hand in the chat group, in the chat format or window. So whoever raises their hand first gets to answer. So then we go into a 50-minute lecture where we go into the actual diseases of dermatology and what types of processes happen with each of these types of diseases, so that then by the last 20 to 30 minutes of class, we're reviewing actual cases. And when we're reviewing cases, I'm giving them a history. I'm going ahead and I'm giving them a little bit of a physical exam background. And then I'm saying, okay, do you have any other questions about the history? Do you have, what would be the next thing that you want to, let's say, discuss with the client? I'm getting them all of this verbally to discuss this. And you can, again, separate them into groups and give them each individual cases if you prefer, or you can do it for the whole class. So it can be a really great opportunity to engage them. And if you notice, we're using multiple methods in this flip format, and it's a little bit of a hybrid because we're still teaching in between.
So what I do to do sort of a flipped classroom method, I had seen this at someone at a conference that I had gone to, a gaming conference, trying to incorporate games into the curriculum, had sort of presented this idea. It wasn't quite exactly like this, but they had presented doing something called a personalized course outline or personalized syllabus for their entire course. And they had all their assignments sort of listed on the course syllabus, and then students could choose which one they want to do and go at their own pace and do their own thing. And I was intrigued by this, but for my class, my physiology and pathophysiology class, it really had to have more structure. They couldn't start going all over the place. There are certain things that build on one another, and if they don't have a good understanding of the nervous system, they're not going to be able to understand things later on. So I love the idea of giving them a little autonomy and freedom to choose sort of what they want to do, but I wanted to make it into more of a structured, sort of less freedom, but sort of restrained. So I created this thing called the personalized syllabus. And again, I did this for my physiology class for the respiratory chapter that we were talking about. So in my class, I divide the body into different systems. So we talk about cardiovascular, we talk about reproductive, we talk about GI. So this one was for the respiratory system. And essentially what I did was I had the students watch two short lectures, 20 minutes each, that they would watch before they came to class. When they arrived at class, I would give them a short quiz on the material. And then I would give them this sort of course syllabus. There are 3 columns that you can see here. So this is how it's supposed to work, meaning how the respiratory system normally works. This is when things don't work well and when you have different sort of problems. And then this column was sort of more about terminology. And then for each column, I had a row of different questions that progressively get more, according to Bloom's taxonomy, more sort of challenging. So the questions up here, which are worth less points, are things that are less involved than the sort of the higher order, higher Bloom's taxonomy terms down at the bottom. So therefore, they're worth less points. So this was a disease matching where they write different disease and match it with clinical signs. They draw gas exchange and how oxygen and carbon dioxide are transported. And then as they get more complicated, they can explain 3 factors affecting gas exchange and 2 factors which keep the lung inflated. They can create a case study about one respiratory disease. They can draw the oxygen dissociation curve and explain what it tells you. So again, these involve some more sort of higher Bloom's taxonomy skills. So what I tell them is they have a certain number of points that they can win. I changed these points right here. I changed it so there was A was 15 points and a B was 9 points. So I give them the freedom to choose which ones they want to do and which activities they feel they want to sort of work on. So it's up to them on what their grade is for this part of for the respiratory unit. If they want to do all the different activities, they will get an A. If they only want to do the, 1, a 2, and a 1, and a 3, then they're going to get less points. So it gives them a little bit of freedom to make choices about what they want to learn, which students really appreciate, and where they want to sort of work or highlight. But it also makes sure that they learn the different concepts that they need to. Most of the students want to get as high a grade as possible, so they do as many of them as they can in the allotted time frame. But again, it allows the student to feel more empowered and have a little bit more control over what they're learning, as well as cover the material. And they can earn as many points as they want, depending on how many they do. At the end of the class, we actually then do a review where each group goes and talks about what they've learned and what which they chose, and we do a round table discussion, either online or in person, talking about what they learned and the different answers that they found. So the other thing I wanted to mention is that crossword puzzle that I had said I had earlier, somebody had asked for the link. This is a link that actually has a bunch of different sort of puzzles on it, as well as different activities that you can do. So there is a slight cost. You can set up for a free account, but then there is a slight cost. It's not that much. And considering what it does, it actually allows for a lot of different activities that you can do online. It's called Book Widgets. And it basically creates these little projects. You can do a crossword puzzle, a word search, a bingo, matching, and then you get a link, and then you can embed that link in your LMS. Or for us, we put it in Blackboard, and then students go to the Blackboard and they just follow the link directly, and then they can put their answers in the crossword puzzle and things. So I have a little video. Oh no, I took the video out. Let me see if I can follow the link. Can you still see my screen?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So this is my account, but again, it's, I hit it twice. So I don't know if you can still see it. I can move this. It's not going in. Start break. Cookies. No. So this is my account, so you can see, and I just wanted to quickly show you that I have a bunch of different widgets, they're called. So this is for my different classes. So this is for my clinical pathology class. I have one for my physiology class. But this, for example, is a crossword puzzle. So if I click on it, it goes to the working form, but I can show you a preview of what it looks like. And then again, this is the crossword puzzle, and the students actually go and put the answers in. So they say, okay, I'm going to answer this one, and then they actually will type in the answer that they want, and it highlights which question it is. And then again, they put all their answers in, and then I get a form back that says if it's correct or not. They email it to me and they send it back. There's all sorts of different widgets that you can do. You can design the background and do all sorts of different things with it. But again, it has a lot of sort of flexibility and a lot of different things that you can do. I just also will quickly show you the matching one, because the matching one is kind of cool. But you can do all sorts of matching ones. I did one with surgical instruments down here. So this was just one that I was showing some colleagues, but this is, you click them over and there's an instrument, and then you're looking for the matching term, so that's not it. So it's going to flip that over, and then, oh, Gulpy retractor. Okay, that was my Gulpy retractor. That's a match. So I made a match. So again, and it'll grade that for you and send their score to you at the end. So it's a really cool program that allows you to do a variety of different things. So, so it's called Book Widgets, and that is the link. If anybody, again, wants more information about it, I can talk to you a little bit more about it, but it has all sorts of different activities that you can do.
So as I had typed in there, by the way, for you, that is our email address. Those are our email addresses. So if we don't get a chance to answer your questions, or you don't get a chance to copy the links that we'll go ahead that we posted, we can go ahead and answer them for you via email, if that helps. Whatever works, we're here. So we're finishing up our presentation at this point, and we're happy to address whatever questions that you guys have.
Absolutely, and we really thank you for listening and being attentive. I have other, and Amanda does as well, other things that we use online that we can send. I use something called concept boards, which allows students to create questions on flashcards. So there's a lot of different resources out there that you can use. You just have to sort of look for them and find out which are the good ones and which are the ones that are most productive. So we really thank you for coming, and we'll answer any questions you may have.
All right, so someone had asked, do you have a link for the crossword puzzle builder you're showing here? And that is on Book Widgets. And then also I can go ahead and let's see if I can get my website, the one that I have with all the games. that has Jeopardy
I
and
have it right here. I'll put it in the group chat.
perfect. So in terms of, at least for that link, but Book Widgets is the one that Sabrina ends up using for the crossword puzzles. And then any thoughts about how to adapt these group activities to social distancing guidelines? How do you get them to work together when they have to sit 6 feet apart? I know, it's crazy. So what we would say is, especially if you're doing online platform, utilize the groups in Zoom. If you are using Zoom, if you're using Blackboard, you can do breakout groups in those. So you can use the groups and still have them sit 6 feet apart. If you're talking about having them in person, then, you know, at that point, then you start to say, okay, well, maybe it's better to have it on an individual basis. Because the assumption is that if you have to have them 6 feet apart, you probably have less or smaller class size to work with. But it's more of a specific situation, and you can still have them discuss things across 6 feet. It's not ideal, but everybody can still have a conversation.
You can also, if they have tablets, use some of these different systems where they can collaboratively work on the same thing, document, or there's something called Liveboard, and I use concept maps where they actually, on the tablet, work together to do different things. They can highlight documents, they can write questions, they can move things around, they can draw pictures. So there is a lot of technology out there if you're lucky enough that they have tablets to be able to use that in individual group, or in one student in one part and another one in another part of the room.
And then Sabrina, I don't know if you want to answer this because you were the one that mentioned the quizzes, but are the quizzes at the start of the class formative or summative? And then, i.e., do they count?
So they do count, but a very small percentage. So I find, you know, I've always toyed with this sort of, should they count or should they not count? Because I want them to take the quiz to really sort of, again, test their knowledge and be more worried about the content and the information and not have it hanging over their head. But I do find that unless it's worth a little something, that they don't take it seriously. So making it worth a very small percentage, it sort of does both things. It allows me to test whether they met the material. It does influence their grade a little bit, but not that dramatically. So I do make it sort of worth a little bit of their percentage of their grade. And I find that they tend to do it more often. They're more eager to participate. So, but there's an argument to say, like, you could do them for nothing and sort of hope that they get, but I really feel that giving them a little something for making that commitment to watch the video and come in prepared. Because really, ultimately, what it's used for is to make sure they watch the video. Put a little sort of wanting them to watch the video so before they come, so they have some background information.
And one way that, because I do a lot of the reviews, I don't necessarily do them as quizzes, but I do a lot of the review games as sort of an implication of a quiz. And the way that I do it is I include it in their participation grade. So if they show that they're not prepared and they're not able to answer a lot of the questions, every class they get a certain number of participation points, and that means they don't get as many participation points that day. So it does still count towards their grade. Again, it's participation. It's the point of what you put in is what you're going to get out, and that helps to reinforce that for some of the students as well.
So the resource that integrates into the LMS and grades it is the Book Widgets.
Mm-hmm.
The Book Widgets, I get a little link and I put it under web link when you put it in Blackboard, and the students can go directly to it, and then I get an email with their answers.
These are great questions, you guys. Thank you for asking them. Please ask us more. And I have a question actually for everybody else. I mean, do you think that these are things that you might be able to implement? Are you finding some of these things possible to add into your curriculum and some of your classes? We'd love to hear some of your ideas about it, how you could implement, because listen, we can share whatever tools that we've come across, but the more that we share ideas on how to use those tools, the more opportunity we have to help our students, really.
I also have a handout that I can send to Jessica that has 101 different activities that you can do with students to keep them engaged. So I got it from somebody who posted it on the internet, and he has since said I could hand it out to people. So it's a really good resource to have different sort of ideas, stimulate you thinking, and different activities. So I've done a bunch of the different ones, just different ways to get students engaged and involved.
And by the way, with the games, there is a website that I'm happy to share with you guys as well. It has Jeopardy on Taboo, and it helps to make the cards for you online with a web link for the students to simply click on. And that is, and the Jeopardy board is all set up. Again, that's something that I will go ahead and I'll find right now. I'll see if I can put into there so Jessica can post it.
I put it in. I put your link in.
Oh, you did already. Perfect.
I already did. It's already up there.
How's that for synchronization there? All right.
All right, so while people are thinking of some ways that they could implement your strategies in your games, I do have a question as well, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah.
From the student perspective, which tool or which game do they react best to? Or do they prefer over another? Or like it's the most participation out of the others?
I actually, for mine, my students got really involved in something really simple. That was sort of, that I found they really got involved in it. So I actually had them follow a link to a whiteboard, and they had to, on this whiteboard, draw out the RAS system, the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system, and different effects of angiotensin. And they worked together in groups to sort of create this board with how angiotensin 2 is sort of activated in the process and what it does. And they really enjoyed it. They were making it colorful, they were putting images, and it was really quite simple. All I did was provide them with a whiteboard to work together in a group. I put them into the breakout rooms, and then there were 3 of them in the breakout room, and they worked together to sort of come up with the information on this sheet, and really, I think, enjoyed in the process. I also really found that they liked the crossword puzzles a lot, and that they find those very helpful, especially as study aids.
Mm-hmm. As far as for me, what I found, the students really like Jeopardy, and they like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. I don't know if it's, I don't know what it is, maybe just because they can connect to it, it's a little bit of a pop culture reference, but especially when I did it online, they really, it got them engaged. They were competing against each other a little bit. They were kind of like, no, I raised my hand first, no, I got it. Or they were sometimes willing to help their fellow classmates. If the classmate didn't get, let's say, the full answer, they'd be like, oh, can I add on to that and help them? So that was another great opportunity on an individual basis. In terms of group work, hands down, the matching questions where it was like, okay, here's the question, here's the answer, now match yourselves up and talk about it with the class. That was a really great exercise that they had a lot of fun with. Thank you for that question, Jessica.
Yes,
Thank
thank you,
you for
Jessica.
sharing. It's always nice to learn new things. I think I shared it before. I don't know if you know, but I am an education major. So about all these different games and everything. That's not what I'm doing right now. It's very interesting, and it's interesting the perspective of from elementary education, where I trained, to college education, and how they can be adapted.
Yeah.
I'd also sort of say my words of wisdom is don't be afraid to try something. Like there's lots of different things out there that you might stumble upon and be like, oh, that's a cool tool. Try it, see if it works. I mean, worst case, it doesn't work as well as you thought. You make adjustments, you fix it. But I think the key for anybody is being willing to sort of experiment a little bit with some of these different tools, find what works for you, and students will go with the flow most of the time, and I think it gives you a little bit more flexibility to try different things. And I'd encourage everybody to sort of give it a try some program, try some crossword or word search or something, and again, modify it to make it work for you.
And keep in mind, I think these students always appreciate having something, anything different than just the straight being talked to concept. You know, anything that's different from that will help to get their attention first and foremost. And then from there on, that's a huge, we can all appreciate that. That in itself is getting their attention is the first sort of big obstacle to get over. So then at that point, if you're using multiple tools and you're not necessarily telling them ahead of time which tool you're going to use, then that's even better, because now it's, oh, let's go to class and see what she got for us, you know, or what they have for us today. And that in itself is, again, a huge hurdle to get over, getting them excited to learn, and then actually being able to figure out how they learn and what's a better way for them to learn is a big part of that.
And I agreed really a lot with Amanda. You really want to spice it up. Don't do the same thing all the time. Throw something in there that's different. Get them, again, more excited. They'll see, oh, what are we doing today? Or, and again, there is some routine stuff, but again, having some sort of spontaneity and sort of like, what are we going to do today is going to excite and make the class interesting.
And again, that's where the book by Ms. Honeycutt really works out nicely, because they have some, if we don't have time right beforehand, you didn't think of something and you need something last minute, I'll be honest, I've been in that situation. Where I literally opened up her little 101 things to do book and was like, okay, what's going to be easy? And it got to the point where I kind of just said, okay, I walked in and I found one, and she said, it's the 5-minute essay or the 10-minute essay, whatever amount of time you want. You go in there and you present the students with the topic that you've already reviewed in the previous class. And you say, okay, take 5 minutes, write everything that you can about it. And then what I did was I actually tweaked that in a couple weeks later. And then I said, well, now take 5 or 10 minutes and make a study guide about what you learned last week. So you can always tweak those little things like that, and it's still different, maybe the similar concept that they're coming up with it, but that little change can make a difference in how they're having to approach the thought process of the content.
And you don't have to make a huge change to your class. Again, you can do little things here and there that, again, add engagement and break up the lecture or the monotony of the class. So again, making small changes, doing some of those small activities really helps to get the course running more smoothly and be more engaging.
We do have another question. What is the title of the book that you just mentioned, Amanda?
So that one is actually in our PowerPoint. It's 101 Ways to Flip. And it's by Barbie, B-A-R-B-I, Honeycutt.
She also has a website. I can get it and send it to you right now and put it in the chat. But she has a website where she gives, she also has a Facebook group. Mm-hmm. And she does a lot with Flipped Classroom. So I'll put the link in the chat.
Yeah, and I mean, they're small books, they're little bound books that can be really valuable to have. And I think there's a series of 3 that she has. You could probably even find them for a couple bucks for a little bit on Amazon, or you might even be able to find them on Scribd if you have a Scribd subscription. But they're great resources for quick and easy. And what I did was last summer, or actually during the Christmas break for this semester, I went through and I said, okay, week 1, this is something that I'll do. Week 2, this is something that I'll do. Week 3, this is something that I'll do. And I just went through the book and put little markers in it, so that then I had a rough idea and I had something to pull from. And I didn't, it's not like I specifically noted how I was going to do it, but having just those things to fall, those concepts to fall back to initially, and then I could tweak them as time got closer to the actual school class. I'm hoping this is helpful for people.
Yes.
It's hard because we can't see you. We can't get
I
that
know.
feedback. Speaking of engagement.
It's very true. It's very true. So we have a lot of people thanking you for your great strategies and tips.
Oh, good.
And
Okay.
Good.
We help somebody out there.
And
Someone
feel
said
free to
that you-
email us. Feel free to email us and ask any questions, or if you need additional resources, we definitely can provide them.
Right, and I'm going to take the resources mentioned in the chat and in this PowerPoint and bring them together for our resources page on abte.net.
That would be awesome. Thank you so much, Jessica.
Of course, of course. We have someone who's mentioning that they like to play games in their classroom and they're going to implement them more, but she's thinking maybe baby steps.
And that's fine.
Baby steps are okay.
Absolutely. We've had time, Sabrina and I have had time now to kind of really get a chance to get more comfortable with the concept. But all we're trying to do is just at least get you to recognize that, you know, it's worth it. It is worth it to try, and don't be afraid to do it. Believe me, even, and I'm sure you guys know this, even when you get that one student out of the entire class that comes to you and says, you know, I really got this concept, or I really enjoyed class today, you guys know that can sometimes make it all worth it, man. We got to hang on to those little moments, and the more that we can give to the students, we really find that they respond very well to this.
I also want to say that if you're doing games, there's nothing wrong with giving a little prize or something.
Nope.
I usually get either candy or like they have these little bet animal erasers that you can buy for like, you know, $5 for 50 of them or something on the internet. So I give them, they love them. They love these little crazy animal erasers. So you can get little things, or when you go to a conference, I know, take different things to use as prizes, because students go crazy over them. And they love those little things that you could use as prizes, and again, give out something, just a small knickknack to like, oh, I won this. They get excited.
Yeah,